honestly, we're gonna put the link to this video up so everyone can see what we're watching. But if you haven't seen this video and you work in advertising and content and stuff, the new series of visiting Korea is just out of this world. Anyways, I don't think you guys want to watch us watching TV. All right.
Man, people watch people playing games all the time. Why would they not want to watch us watching TV?
Honestly, it's been such a fucking long time that I've been mind blown. And if you want to see an amazing, creative, entertaining, lovely series of ads, there's this campaign called Imagine Your Korea. You should check it out. I think it's the tourism kind of folks of Korea that did this series, and we were just targeted on a YouTube ad, and then I got obsessed. Anyways, so if you want to see something cool, you want to be inspired, and you work in tourism, actually, I wish Dubai did something like this, actually.
Duck It today is sponsored by Korea.
I mean, no, I'm just so mind blown. It's so rare that we get excited about something, or at least I get excited about an ad.
But we do this all the time. We sit here and watch ads. That's how we get like inspiration. We watch music videos, we watch ads.
Amazing.
And then in between, we do a bit of work.
Yeah, sometimes, yeah. Cool. So the last episode we were talking about how we're changing, how we're pivoting, how DUCKLIFE is getting into like venture business. Like we're basically evolving towards DUCKLIFE Ventures, and some interesting things have happened since we kind of announced it. Well, we didn't really announce it. We just mentioned it on the podcast, and the podcast went live yesterday.
It did, yeah.
And it's been 24 hours, and my network kind of lit up a little bit. And I don't know if the same thing happened to you, but a few people reached out to me. And thank you for reaching out. I didn't even know people would.
We actually have listeners.
Would watch, like people watch and listen. So that's amazing. But yeah, they reached out and they were like, wow, that's fucking amazing. Good for you. Fucking right. The agency world is fucked. You're absolutely right. Like a lot of people agreed with us, and a lot of people were excited to see us kind of get back to building. So that's super kind of feels great, I think.
It's really motivating.
And what's interesting is I've been having a few conversations with people about kind of venture building and the whole business model of venture building and like incubators / studios. I mean, they're like, everyone's been talking about them for about a year now. A lot of ex-VCs are trying to become venture builders or incubators or whatever. A lot of already existing venture builders are trying to like raise money and expand or accelerate their venture building, capability. But one recurring kind of comment I hear, and I heard it yesterday as well, but I've heard this for the last, I would say, year or so, is that people who come up with concepts to build venture building organizations are finding it very difficult to raise money.
Not too much of a surprise.
Yeah, I mean, I'm very conscious that I have a lot of like personal friends and people that I respect in the VC space, so I'm going to watch what I say. But I think, I think what's really interesting is that it just reinforces what we know, that the money markets here and the money supply here isn't generally one that promotes innovation or promotes progression or pushes our ecosystem forward. It's one that just fuels whatever's there.
Yeah.
And I've said this 100 times, we might have 100 VCs, but most of them are just proxies or acting as proxies of bigger funds. And essentially the kind of investing mindset and logic is just exactly the same across the board. And so you're not seeing like many funds do anything different. And the value proposition of these VCs is essentially all the same, right? You have some that are trying to differentiate and say, oh, we can help you operate, or, oh, we have experience in this, or, but it's all bullshit. It's just a bunch of people who are able to convince other people to raise money, but they themselves don't know how to identify or even build organizations. And so, like, no offense, it's just the reality, right? It's a reality. And also, when I hear from multiple people that if you're a venture building organization and you're having trouble raising money, I mean, we all know, let's just call a spade, it's because investors here invest with predominantly two kind of frameworks. and I'll be super forthcoming about it, and I'll simplify it. So maybe I oversimplify it. But one, they invest if they have FOMO, basically. So a brand gets launched, and I don't know, there's an ex-Kareemer at the head of it, let's say, or in it. So that credibility, check, right? And then it's a hot industry. It's agritech, fintech, edutech, whatever's the hottest thing of the season. Check, and if the market sizing is over, like, I don't know, let's say $10 billion, check. And then if it's well hyped and the brand is good, and we're really good in the Middle East at hype. So if this new brand has a ton of hype, then most investors who get FOMO will invest. That's one way that they do it.
Pretty good strategy as a crypto guy.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I'm not necessarily saying it's wrong, but I'm just saying their framework of investing in the region is generally based on FOMO, right? And then the other reason they might invest is if it's strategically they're been assigned to do that, right? I think we don't necessarily see the kind of funds that will really take the initiatives to push or innovate or drive anything necessarily new. That's left really entirely to the kind of entrepreneurs and stuff, and they're left kind of by themselves. And so if you come up with something that's a bit different or crazy or no one's talking about, the likelihood of you getting investment is quite small. And so, when I hear that venture building organizations are finding it generally more difficult than organizations in raising money, that's because your VCs or your investors here aren't ready to make bets on organizations that are selling that they're going to be able to build organizations. Even if they pitch ideas that they already have or concepts that they're ready to build, I think VCs here don't necessarily have that appetite. They feel a bit too removed from it, and so they're unable to assess what it is that they're kind of investing in.
Why is it? Is it more on the? I mean, you know more about this side than I do, but what is that down to? The short-termism, wanting to kind of see an exit within a shorter period of time? Is it an inexperienced thing?
I think venture building organizations actually are more short-term than brands themselves, because their business model as a venture builder is to churn out as many as you can and exit as many as you can. Fail as quickly as you can. And so if you're a VC and you're really short-term exit minded, investing in a venture building organization is more in line with your kind of investment kind of ethos, right? Like they want what you want, but they're actually building it based on what you need too, because they need that too.
What are the other benefits
of what of investing in venture building?
Exactly.
is basically that you're diversifying a little bit, right? And that if the venture building organization has the same mindset as the VC, because essentially they do, then if they feel that something's not going to work out, they're going to cut it immediately, cut your losses quickly, which is what a VC does immediately. So it's the same mindset. Second, it leverages success and spreads the kind of added value across different organizations. So if they have really good teams in-house that know how to build one product, then they can build two products. And then there's the economies of scale. You and I both know,
exactly.
We've been running this advisory marketing business for 2.5 years. And we all know, I mean, I hate to say this too openly, but the problems that we're faced with are quite similar. The solutions that we apply are quite similar. Yes, there is some tailoring, there is some customization.
There's independent thinking for the problems, but generally, across the spectrum, the problems are very
exactly
similar.
And I don't want to dwell on this talking point for too long, but what I find incredible, and one thing I'd love to remind the kind of, I don't know who's going to listen to this, hopefully some investors too. The reason we have a startup ecosystem is because a venture builder came to the region. Rocket Internet came to the region and started the most successful fashion platform, ride-hailing platforms, food platforms that we have. So venture building as a type of business, as an organizational kind of business model, etc., is largely responsible for the acceleration that we had in kind of our digital kind of startup ecosystem here. And so money, VCs of the market should take note, and it is a proven model. It works. And if venture building organizations are starting to be kind of starting to mushroom and they have, ex startuppers in them, then I feel they are often a better bet for VCs.
equipped.
So yeah, I think VCs for those who are listening, I think venture building as a topic, not just because we're getting into it, I think it's there's a lot of education that needs to happen, and I think that we need to be able to fund these types of organizations because they will accelerate everything. Yeah. On that note, I also wanted to point out that DUCKLIFE Ventures as an organization is going to start launching its own brands and its own products, but we've consciously decided not to raise money at this stage for various reasons. One, we believe so much in our ideas and we believe so much in our capability that we don't think it makes any sense to raise money now. One, because we don't need the money to get it off the ground, and two, we don't want to give it all up before we build it. And we are so confident in what we're building that we know we'll be able to raise it if and when we need it.
Exactly.
Yeah. So on that front, I want to talk about the first business that we're launching and the challenges that we're being faced with today.
First challenge, second challenge, third challenge.
Yeah. So we are.
How much did we say in the last episode? What did we talk about? We say what we're doing.
We didn't really talk about the industry itself. We didn't really talk about the kind of business itself or the business model or the fact that, we're doing this or that. So I don't want to get into that. The one challenge that I think that I would love to talk about is we had a brand, we had a name. And before going to market and before launching, we wanted to trademark the name.
Yep, as you do.
Yeah, and so we applied for trademarks in the EU, in the US, in Canada, in different markets in the Middle East, and generally everything was okay until we hit a kind of roadblock in the EU, and we all of a sudden realized, oh shit. We won't be able to get that trademark, and that's a risk for the business. And so now we're like, okay, before we go to market, should we rethink what we're called and et cetera? And if we rethink what we're called, we're changing, in essence, a lot, right?
And there's a few things to take away from what we're about to say. Not just on rethinking a name, but when you overthink a brand, when you overthink a logo.
Yeah.
Like, we can... Yeah, I think we have someone at the door.
Yeah.
It's fine.
Yeah.
But but this whole point on how we creatively think, or how you build a brand in the first place. Like we love the original name that we had, but at the same time, early stage you can shift it.
Yeah, and we didn't go through the notions of doing the trademark search, and I think we always forget this, and I think a lot of brands in the region forget this too. And I think it's like I'm just pointing out the mistakes that we've made, that we should have done this research.
Yeah.
We should have, scoured all the markets and did the kind of trademarking exercise before we developed through and through the brand.
There's
and I
a
think
cost attached to trademarking.
Yeah. I mean, and you don't have to do the trademarking registration. You just have to do the searches. And that cost can at least flag any challenges, right? And I think we should have done that early on, and we didn't. So that's, I think, a really important learning for anybody who's thinking about that. And we knew it. We just always forget it. And so when we needed to start thinking about what we're going to call it, there have been kind of unwritten rules about branding, right? And if you speak to people that work in branding, they tell you it's bullshit, like there are no rules. But if you speak to people that are in marketing and that are executives, etc., they still seem a bit more traditional, and they're like, no, there are some unwritten rules that we wouldn't kind of recommend. But branding people actually say there are no rules. Yeah. And so I think we're of the kind of thinking that there are no rules.
Well, there's recommendations rather than rules, and there's kind of, I wouldn't even call it best practice. I would say it's more you can conform or you can not. And in today's world, it's probably better to not conform so much, depending on the business.
I mean, we say that, but still the vast majority of brands conform.
Because it's
right?
What people know. people don't necessarily.
It's safe.
It's a safer route.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And so we're gonna change the name. We've already come up with the name. I'm pretty confident that we'll go with it.
There's a raw win there. We went for a very creative process. You can share your creative process is watch videos, feel the mood for the day, watch more videos, pitch it to Steve. Steve rejects. Steve stews on it. Steve falls in love with it. Chris gives the hype train, shares it with the rest of the team and his wife. They reject. They will fall in love with it too. That's our creative process.
I mean, that's not our creative process with clients.
No, of course not.
With clients, we follow a much more kind of systematic, process-driven, structured means of figuring out what the best kind of brand identity should be. Yeah. But internally, I'll be very honest, like, I don't buy that shit. And I think as an organization, the way we build our own brands and stuff and our identity is a pure representation of who we are. Yeah. And that's because that's how we think about branding, but different organizations think about branding differently and how they want to build their brands. And so it really, like, we try to satisfy everyone's kind of objectives. But for us, we want our brands to be manifestations of who we are and what we stand for.
Exactly.
And so that's really the predominant force in us figuring out what we're going to be called. And, you know, we were inspired, I think you mentioned the Boring Company. Yeah. You know, Elon Musk's underground tunnel building kind of business.
That was the first. That was the first thing that resonated with me when you pitched the name. It was like the opposite. Like and it's non-conformist.
You know what's crazy? I called Hisham. You know Hisham from Freedom. Yeah. And I'm like, you know what? He's so straight up, and he builds brands every day, and we respect each other so much that we're always almost offensive to each other. And so I'm like, you know what? Let me call him and let me tell him. Let me get his feedback. And that's why I love having people who work in the industry. Yeah. Because it's like, and people that are a bit like us, rebellious. And I think the people at Freedom are very much aligned with us. Yep. And so I called him and I asked him, like, hey, listen, this is the scenario. This is what's going on. And this is what I want to call the company. And this is my story. This is the reason. This is like the whole idea behind it, blah, 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 blah. And you know what he said? He's like, it's a no fucking brainer. Because it's a no brainer. You should absolutely do that. Yeah. And he said, and I'm like, are you sure? He's like, absolutely. Yeah. He's like, there's not even a question in my mind. He's like, it's absolutely amazing. It's a fantastic, it's completely refreshing. It's different. It's this and that. And he goes, and you know what? He gave me the example of the company in the UK that got sued because they had milk in their name. But they weren't a milk company; they were a vegan company. Oh yeah! And now they're called not meat, not milk, not whatever, and now all their products are called not something. Yeah. And
it reminds me of the No Brand Company. You know, the one where you get all the
exactly the no name.
No name. Like, if it's Korean or Japanese, it's that's a cool brand as well.
Anyway, so when he told me, he was like, listen, man, like people who don't get it will never get it. And people who do get it will love it. And it doesn't really matter because you're going to put it down everyone's throat anywhere and they're going to learn about it. And so when it comes to thinking about what you're going to name your company, like whatever your process is your process. Mm-hmm. Whatever feels right for you is right for you. And always get opinions, always bounce ideas off people, always kind of get that support system, but don't.
But branding is
it's a personal reflection of who you are.
But it is also
a dictatorship.
Exactly.
It's not a fucking democracy. And what's that quote we always say? If you want to make the wrong decision, ask everyone.
Yes.
Right? And I really fundamentally believe that's true on everything.
We have lived that throughout our entire careers.
Yeah. Like even on a personal life. Yeah. You know what I mean? Like if
we seek that out in society, though, right? We need reassurance.
Everyone wants approval. Everyone wants approval. But if you want to make the wrong decision, ask everybody.
Exactly.
No one lives your life. No one has your context. No one has your experience. Nobody has your values. You are unique in every sense of the word. So when you're building your brand or making your day-to-day decisions, sure, share your thoughts, share your ideas, try to get feedback. But don't make a decision based on everybody else's opinion.
Yeah, exactly.
So we're going to call our company, I'm not going to say, but we're going to call our company what we decided,
Yeah.
and it's gonna fucking shock everybody, and good.
Exactly.
And yeah, that's that. And I think that's a big learning. I think it's a good thing that we're talking about it today.
Yeah. And when are we? So we're taking this live, version 1, soon-ish. We now, because of the
probably
change,
like
we have to do a bit of design work.
Probably end of May, beginning of June will be the earliest.
Yeah, I think so. In reality, and we're going to put it in the hands of like quite a large group of like select people, contacts.
Yes, so it's gonna hit the market and
feedback.
It's gonna be pretty epic, and I'm really excited. We're already at the 5th version of the product, and so it's really been an exciting process.
Yeah.
But that's gonna launch soon. On that front, I think there's some exciting things happening.
What, in terms of what we're doing at DUCKLIFE?
No, generally.
In general. Because we're starting to think about our second concept as well.
Yeah, but that's
another story. That's another episode.
No, but I think that's
It's kind of a segue in.
It's a segue into kind of what we wanted to talk about today. Crypto is going to go through something really exciting.
Yeah, big day for the industry.
Yeah,
with Coinbase.
Says the guy who only wears Bitcoin t-shirts.
I mean, when the collection launches, I'll wear DUCKLIFE t-shirts as well.
Sure.
But today's a big day for the industry. I think, so congrats to Brian Armstrong and the team at Coinbase. Even though I have a love-hate relationship with the brand.
Why?
Depending on where you share my details and with who.
Why? Because they gave your details to your government?
Yeah, from a tax point of view. But I'm based
You're
in
like,
UAE.
that's why I'm in Dubai. Why are you guys taxing me?
So thanks for the letter. It was a waste of ink. But on a serious note, I think it's a huge moment for the industry because a number of things. One, it gives like credibility to an industry that's kind of danced around regulation and kind of, a lot of negative opinions.
I was having a conversation with a guy from CoinSquare, which is a Canadian, I guess, exchange, startup exchange. And they're also super pro-regulation, and they have been homies with the government, And,
But regulation's a good thing.
And I know the whole mindset of like the crypto space and the blockchain space and all that stuff is really like anti-institutional and fuck the government. No, I get it. And I align with most of it. But if we really want this shit to be adopted, if we really want to be able to get this to kind of scale, if we want the narrative to change a little bit, we have to change the tone. And seeing IPOs and seeing, I know you're maybe not happy that they shared your information with the revenue agency, but even with me, they shared it with the Canadian revenue agency, and I get it. And I'm like, that type of activity and those types of relationships between the exchanges, the crypto exchanges and governments, I think is important, right? And that's going to help things get kind of moving faster. You're going to see like bigger banks, you get involved, you're going to see things like that. So I think it's all good.
Tell me why you need banks, like if we really want to go into that. But on the regulation front,
because 99% of the world is banking with them. That's why we need them for now.
There's a large portion of the world that are unbanked, and they're not going to be serviced by the traditional.
And they're the ones that are going to benefit from this the most, hopefully.
But if you talk about regulation, so I'm on the kind of the side that regulation and clarity is important for adoption because and obviously it brings in it unlocks different pools of money to be able to take action.
Yeah.
I think the main fear within the industry is twofold. There is regulation that is retrofitted based on a traditional system, therefore not innovated upon, and that trying to force that in is like forcing a kind of, a round peg into a square hole type thing. And that's a problem for the space because that stifles innovation. So I do think that the time that's starting to be taken around it is a good thing because I think certain governments around the world are actually starting to look at this in a much different way. And I actually think here we're actually in quite a forward-thinking type environment. The second thing on the regulation front is the kind of the regulators per se almost not necessarily seeking too much counsel or advice from the industry itself. So if we're going to build regulation and put regulation into the space, then that regulation needs to have kind of a lot more input than it perhaps has today. from from the industry itself. Now, obviously, you've kind of got to stop going too far from like the full libertarian like mindset of things.
Sure.
But I think those two things, as this space evolves, that's what you're going to see more of. And obviously, Coinbase going public is pretty much a huge kind of green light to a lot more kind of progress that I think you're going to see, particularly in some of these larger economies.
Yeah, I mean, listen, on the regulation thing, I hear you, but I'm just like, to assume that regulators are gonna collaborate in the kind of process with the industry. I like to believe that's what they're gonna do.
But you're starting to see it.
Yeah.
You are seeing it. It has to happen, right? Like we live in a new world of digital and technology where the speed of innovation far outpaces any stupid human that tries to stand in its way. Mm-hmm. If you stand too much in the way of this progress, it's probably going to just bulldoze through. That's not the right way to go about kind of how we want to see, mainstream adoption, how you'd want to kind of like benefit the society as a whole. So collaboration is obviously key. I think, things will be difficult. There will be disagreements. Things are going to take a lot more time, but it's paramount for, progress. Because, and here's the 100%. Thing, there's countries around the world that are going to take these steps. So the kind of the legacy, like older, countries maybe with more power, who are slower in this kind of journey, are just going to be outsmarted by countries that are going to take a different approach. So the industry, Bitcoin, is borderless. Doesn't really care about your borders. It doesn't care about countries or your politics. So this space.
Yeah, I wish. So I think regulatory wise and environment wise and atmosphere wise, like the government here, the regulators here are seemingly very pro crypto.
I mean, there was a really cool statement they came out with the other day, which was, in terms of, I think it was View, and I can't remember who said it, but a view that, could double GDP, by fully adopting it and allowing that growth and innovation, which is great to see.
Yeah, and
so we're in the right place.
And I think we're in the right place. I think that's a huge plus.
Yeah.
I think what still kind of worries me is kind of what we've seen so far in the space here, right? Like I haven't seen anything that's really impressed me. No. I haven't seen anything that's really like made me feel, oh damn, yes, we have really good movers and brands and players in crypto, whether it's on the exchange front or anything, right? And I know you and me see a bit differently on a couple of these players, but yeah, I'm not seeing the wave of interest and innovation in that space here. Maybe we're not seeing it yet. Maybe the regulations aren't there. Maybe there's a lot of people working on it. And it's going to mushroom up soon. I hope so.
I think this kind of the wave, and I mean, there's a lot of news events of price rise, and that's one thing that kind of attracts new audiences. But if we kind of put that, like keep parking that to one side, if you look at kind of what's happening with Coinbase, so if you look from an exchange point of view, exchanges, like the on-ramps that are required, that's a problem, like still today. There's not enough on-ramps, quality on-ramps. I mean, Coinbase is certainly one of the better ones, but it's hard. I mean, you can't even access. So there's an issue there. And then I'll be honest, when it comes to the whole industry, the user experience, the terminology, the interface is all terrible.
It's terrible.
Like majority is really bad. It's, the terminology of talking about crypto as a whole scares people off. Coins, digital stuff.
Yeah, and trust is everything, right?
Yeah,
like trust is everything for this industry, for early adopters, etc. And in the region, like just to bring it back to the region, we've seen a couple brands try it, right? We've seen people like Rain and Bahrain, etc. and stuff like that. And I'll be very honest, like it's super underwhelming, right? Like super underwhelming, and really like, I hope they get their onboarding fixed. I hope they figure out, how to do things properly. But I think there's an ocean of opportunity, and I think I'd love to see more players in there, and I think it's even a space that DUCKLIFE is going to go into, right? I think we absolutely believe in that space, and we absolutely want to participate. And I think that's definitely going to be one of the ventures I think that we're going to kind of explore and kind of start building towards.
Yeah.
And I think we're going to do it sooner rather than later.
I mean, the speed
And
the
so,
industry moves, I think.
yeah.
very
I think
likely.
by by the end of this summer, maybe we'll actually get going on that once we figure out kind of the permits, the licenses, and stuff like that. I think it's definitely a space that we want to get into, and it's actually refreshing to see that the MCC as a free zone is also one that is super kind of pro as well. Let's just hope it's not just PR, and that they actually build the framework and the systems to kind of,
Yeah, I've seen. Yeah,
you know what I mean?
it looks positive.
Cool. There was also like a really interesting kind of announcement this week that Mohammed Al-Labar was getting into digital payments. And it's on one side it's amazing, it's great because if anybody can do anything, it's definitely this guy. I mean, what he's done with Noon is already incredible. What he's done with real estate is epic. And you could hold many things against the guy, but you can't say that when he gets into a business, he owns it.
Yeah.
So that's super interesting to see that happen.
What are the finer details of what it's?
I don't know. It's like a digital payments, solution. I think he wants to get the unbanked banked, and he wants to kind of democratize, financial services and financial kind of solutions for people.
I'd be really interested to see what the settlement layer is.
Yeah, I don't know, and I think it makes sense,
that's
right?
Going to be the different. I mean, this is the problem with this. I guess this is one of the main challenges of this adoption phase of what we're just talking about, but also kind of what we're doing here.
Yeah.
We're still, as a whole, as a region, quite far behind in terms of that digital adoption of just banking and digital like payments, let alone kind of shifting all the way through that and actually going into more of a kind of I think crypto space.
Yeah, I think we'll see. I don't know. Right now, it's just a press release. It always starts
pretty
like
soon
that.
after Stripe announced their
Exactly. It seems like a defensive strategy and kind of like now going back on the offensive and trying to typically how the region operates. The one thing that I find like good fundamentally is that all the regulatory licensing permits, banks, systems in place that historically were slowing down these innovations, a guy like him can kind of blow through that like nobody else can. He knows a few people. I think he's pretty well connected. But I think a guy like that can fix a lot of things. Whereas a small startup with a bit of funding, might take 5 years to figure something out. He could probably do it in a couple of months.
But this is an important piece, right? So on this note, the little guy, you really want to see like speed and innovation in this whole space, and you want the region to like own. Allow the little guy to breathe. Don't hold them back while a bigger player tries to hoover it up. You will slow progress.
I mean, listen, that's
and acquire the little player if you need to acquire.
And I want to say, like, it's not just a regional problem. It's a global problem, right? Like the big guys, like the whole monopolistic approach to things isn't good overall, right? And when you have such big players with unlimited resources, unlimited pull and influence and stuff like that, and that, you have that with Amazon, you have that with Microsoft and with Apple, you have that with the big, huge brands and their unlimited kind of capabilities just take over and hoover up industries, right? I mean, and it's not even like a regional thing, like so it's not like unique to us. It's omnipresent everywhere, right? But inherently, what people need to realize, and regulators need to realize, and industry leaders need to realize, is that the more these bigger groups or companies or entrepreneurs jump into spaces and just play under different rules, it wipes out other opportunity, right? Exactly. It wipes up innovation, and if we look at e-commerce, for example, like AWOC, Spree, what was it called?
Which one?
The Rocket Internet one that failed. Wadi.com. I mean, endless amount of companies who've just failed in the e-commerce space. Is they're a dime a dozen, right? And it's also because the space has gotten so hyper competitive that it's very difficult to kind of sustain a business, right? And so I think that on one front, I'm super excited to see all the change and innovation and speed of digital payments and how that's going to be kind of positively changed. So I'm more positive than negative, but sometimes I get a bit worried that at the same time, it's making it more and more difficult for the little guys to be able to compete and survive. And at the end of the day, it's a dog eat dog world, and it's just the way the world works. Like, and so if you're going to be able to compete, you're going to have to be quite ferocious. And I think generally it's a positive thing, but I think one thing to always think in the back of our mind is that it shouldn't only be the big guys that can change things.
Yeah. But I also think it's on that point, and I know there'll be many people that disagree with this statement. The big guys can benefit immensely from allowing the little guys breathing room. Not because they compete directly, because they will compete, but they're likely going to be able to see things differently, innovate differently,
100%.
far more agile in terms of what they do, and they will break things and fail and succeed, and that's a benefit to larger players. So if you want speed of innovation, you allow them to thrive. If you want to just take a monopoly on the space, you're probably going to get outsmarted by an international competitor. It's as straightforward as that when it comes to digital payments.
I think Kareem is the perfect example.
Exactly.
Right. And I think that kind of reinforces what we said. Yeah, I think to end this kind of episode, one thing that I think I'd like to talk about as well is it's Ramadan. So to all those who celebrate, Ramadan Mubarak, and I hope it is a joyful season and an event for people. We've gone through some shit the last year and a half. It's the second time that we have a Ramadan during COVID.
Yeah, this one's slightly better than last time. It was very tough last year.
It's a bit eye-opening to say that we're doing it again, though. It just feels.
It demonstrates the length of time we've been living with it. Again, we've said this before. We're super lucky here.
Yeah.
Like super lucky.
Absolutely.
But for a lot of people, it's
quite
tough.
It's quite, like, for me, eye-opening at how real our situation is, right?
Yeah.
The world, not DUCKLIFE, right?
Yeah.
And from a branded content standpoint, I just want to kind of say something, and maybe people will not be happy with what I'm saying, but like, why does it have to be the most boring time for branded content?
Yeah.
Why does everyone have to do the exact same thing?
Everyone contributes to the noise. Like,
It's
brands
just every
produce
year
noise.
it happens again and again and again and again. And, yes, wish me, a happy Ramadan. Thank you. But
do it differently.
But do something, say something, like, do something good, like, contribute to the brand equity that you're trying to build, participate in your community differently. Don't just vanilla the hell out of your, like, campaigns. Don't just contribute to the same crap over and over again. I mean, this Ramadan is a really, really, this is the second time we're going through a COVID. It's the second time that seeing your families is going to be touchy. We're living something extraordinary. I mean, it would be great for the brands to kind of say stuff that inspires us, or that, humbles us, or that, makes us think, or that educates us, or that entertains us in a way that's different, right? And there's room for that. And so, and lastly, you know what I mean? If you think you're having a tough time this time around, just think about all the refugees. Think about the families that just spent some of the coldest winters, harshest winters in the camps in Amman, for example, in Jordan. Like, think about people that are less fortunate. That's what it's all about. And think about really how you can change their lives as a brand, as a person. And that's really what we stand for. And we're going to try to do things. I think Nadia's already working on something. And I think also our donations are due in this month. So we're going to make our payments. But I also think, like, let's really think about, who we are as a community, as a society. I think there's no better time to reflect on that. And as brands, we need to step up. We need to change the narratives. We need to do things that are more exciting. We need to create content that actually resonates and changes things. We have a responsibility, and I hope that DUCKLIFE, as well as all the other brands in the region, step up to the plate.
Yeah. Watch some music videos. Watch some ads. Watch ads from different parts of the world.
Absolutely.
Just totally different parts of the world. Go to Latin America.
On that note,
Go to Korea.
we started it this way. We should end it this way.
There we go. Perfect way. We're gonna have to share the link.
I really want to go to Korea.
Yeah.
Do they have a quarantine rule?
I don't think they're letting people like us in there.
All right, take it easy.
See you guys.